Okay, guys, for this werewolf, you're going to need the patterns in the description below. You're going to need a 4.5-inch pool noodle. You're going to need a couple ears. I'll show you how to make them. Some faux fur, hands, feet, some hair noodles, some pipe cleaner, some dowel rods, a 1-inch cork, some string, some fabric, a weight, a bead, some paint. Not that paint. I'll show you which paint I'm going to use here in just a second. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with the body. We're going to cut a piece of fur at 8.25 by 6.5, and we're going to turn it to the side, and we are going to comb in both sides because we're going to do a glue it down the sides to glue it together so we have a nice seam down the back when we get done. Just kind of get that hair pulled in on both sides. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your fur will cover up any imperfections, but let's try to get it as close as we can. And just take your time gluing down the side. Just take a little bit at a time, glue it over, and get it all the way glued in. And then I didn't tell you that we're going to need some ribbon because we're going to attach it to the back of this just to secure it really well. Just get all that tucked in and glued down. And then when we get done and we comb it out, you won't even see where that seam was. All right, now that we got that all glued together, we're just going to take a ribbon, any color, any size ribbon you want to, or just kind of go down the side there, the length of it, and just glue it in. Kind of did a zigzag on my glue and glued that ribbon in. It's just going to secure it a little bit more so it stays together. Okay, once we get that glued in, we're going to go ahead and turn it right side out. And we're going to attach it to our noodle. Just turn it right side out. We're going to go ahead and comb it out so that seam is completely sealed over. Just comb it on both sides. And then we're going to attach it to our noodle. And then we're going to take a heavy duty thread and we are going to do a casing around the top to close that completely in. But make sure that your thread is a heavy duty thread because you do not want it to break. We're just going to do 1/4 inch stitches all the way around. And then we're going to close that opening up. And then once we get that all the way closed up and tied off, we're going to make sure that the top part is flush with our noodle, and then we're going to glue it in. My hair was sticking in my thread there, so sorry about that. Close it up, tie it off, and then we're going to clip off our thread and we are going to glue it to the noodle. So just make sure that it is pushed all the way down and then glued in. And then I got out of the camera a little bit on this next step. And what I did on the next one is I just trimmed off the bottom. So take the bottom edge of the backing of the faux fur and trim it off flush with the bottom of that noodle. And it doesn't have to be perfect because his pants are going to cover it up anyway. Once we get that flush, pull it on up. And then we're going to go ahead and attach our glue all the way around just to secure it in there real well. And then we're going to take it and we're going to trim all that excess fur off the bottom because when we put his pants on, we don't need all that extra stuffing inside of there. Just trim it all the way around. And then we're just going to put that aside and we're going to build his nose. Go ahead and take the pattern. And I gave you a little bit bigger pattern than the one I'm using here because I did struggle a little bit with this nose. But just go ahead and cut it out and then comb out your fur. And then I will show you why I gave you a little bit more fabric on this pattern. So we're going to take it just like we did the body, comb it in on both sides because we're going to glue it together and then we're going to turn it right side out. Just glue down one side and then fold it over and get that glued in real well. And then you're going to use a stick too with that, like a little dowel pin. And I did like 1.5 inches on that. And that's a 1-inch cork. So stick the cork down in the center there and we're going to roll it back. And this is why I made the pattern a little bit bigger for you because you'll have a little bit more room to roll that back. You just have to cut off a little bit more when you get done at the end. But just keep it rolled back because we want it to be nice and flush. And then we're going to go ahead and push it down onto the cork, but we're going to have the cork inset into that a little bit more because we're going to put our nose on and then we're going to glue it in so that our hair actually comes right up to our nose. So get it pushed down there before you glue it in. And then we're just going to take the glue and just glue all the way around the edges of it, just kind of squeezing it up there a little bit so it doesn't get too far down, I mean. And then we're going to go ahead and cut off the backing of it. And you can put a little bit of glue around the edges of that as well if you want to. And then we're going to go ahead and stick our stick in there. It's an 1.5 inch stick. And then we're going to attach our nose. We're just going to put a little bit of glue all along the top part and around the edges of the fur. And then we're going to put our nose on, and we're going to just kind of squeeze all that up there together so that it completely covers up that cork. Okay, we're going to go ahead and build his pants. We're going to take him, open them up, and just glue the very, very top part edge of both sides. And then we're going to put those aside while we build his legs. And we're going to take a pool noodle, and I used one that's about 5/8 of an inch, and we're going to cut them at 3.5 inches in length. And the dowel rod that you're going to use is 1/4 inch by 6 inch. So we're going to measure it at 3.5, cut that off, and we're going to cut a second one exactly the same size. So cut the first one and then use the second one as the guide, just so that you make sure that they're both exactly the same length. We're just going to cut that off, and then we're going to insert our sticks. Just stick them all the way down until they are flush with the bottom. All right, then we're going to put that aside, and we're going to go ahead and finish out his pants. We're going to open it up with the facing sides together, and we are going to glue down both sides and then along the inside of the inseam. And just make sure that when you do the inseam, you open that up really wide, because you don't want it, you want to make sure that it is completely sealed up along the bottom edge. Just on the very inside of the inseam. And glue that all the way around. And then we're going to go ahead and fold those two sides together here in a second. The two legs, because we want to make them kind of match. And we're going to just kind of trim around the edge, just to kind of give it a jagged edge around the bottom leg of his bottom part of his leg. Just, you can kind of trim it out however you want to. I'm just kind of doing some little U's. Then we're going to go put that aside, and we're going to go ahead and attach his nose. And I'm coming down 2 inches from the top of that noodle and poking a hole in there, and just make sure that you're poking it in there. Make sure that that seam where you glued that together is in the back. Put his nose in. Go ahead and add some glue inside and around the edges, and then just glue that in. You can just pull that hair up around the edge of the nose so it kind of meets up with it. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut out our arms and our legs, and we are going to do it with the nap of the fur facing downward. And we're going to cut just behind the backing only. Do not cut through your fur, just the backing only. And we're going to do this to all of our pieces. All of our arms and our legs are going to go, the nap is going to go downward. And then on the tail, it really doesn't matter. You can just use a piece of scrap and cut it out. And because you can comb that downward, it doesn't really matter. You can have it facing that way or the opposite way. And just cut behind the faux fur only. And then we're going to go ahead and clean all of our pieces up just to get all that fur off of those. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do his feet. We're going to take his toes, and we are going to cut them completely open. And then we're going to cut them in little diagonals, like little points on both his hands and his feet. And this is going to give him the look like he has claws. So do that for both hands and both feet, just little points. And then we're going to come back, and we are going to lightly mist them with some Krylon leather brown paint. And so kind of get away from them as far as you can and spray them. And we're just going to kind of mist them till we get them a little bit grungy looking. And then we're going to come back, and we're going to use some black chalk paint. I used Valspar. You can use any kind you want to. And we're just going to paint the very tips of his claws and do it on the inside and the back side on all of them. Just make sure that that entire point is painted all the way around. We're going to do the hands, and then we're going to do the same thing with the feet as well. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and take our noodle, and we are going to cut it at 4.5 inches, and these are going to be for our arms. And my dowel stick is a little bit short there. Cut your dowel sticks at 2.5 inches, because we're going to stick 1 inch into the noodle and the other 1.5 inches into the pool noodle. Go ahead and make sure that those are completely even, because you want his arms to be the same length. Put that wire back in there, and then we are going to glue that inside, just so that that wire stays secure inside of there. And we're going to do that to both noodles. Just make sure it's glued in good. Then trim off the excess wire, and then we're going to go ahead and attach it to our hands. Just put a little bit of glue inside the hand. Put our noodle in there. And then I tried to put a little glue around there to hold it tight. It wasn't holding it tight enough, so I grabbed some string and I just tied it off. Tie it as tight as you can so that it's as tight to that noodle as you can get it. We're going to do the same thing to the other noodle. Just make sure both of them, just get it as tight as you can get it. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to attach it to the fur, and you are going to have to trim your fur out a little bit. We're going to take it and we're going to place it onto the fabric, and we are going to glue right in the center that arm in, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap the other side of the arm, the fabric over the arm, and then we're going to trim the next piece. So you can go ahead and just cut it up a little bit, not all the way up, just enough to get it just flush with the other piece of fabric. And then we're going to cut the rest of it at a diagonal so we don't have too much hair on his arms. And at the end, I'm going to show you how I thinned mine out afterwards too. So just go on a diagonal up the arm a little bit and get that excess off of there. We just want enough just to seal that in there flush. So just get it glued in real good. Just make sure that both of the two sides of the fur meet each other. And then we're going to go ahead after we get it all glued in, and we are going to glue the the fur together so that it totally closes up that seam. So go ahead and lay that down and open up that part in the middle. Put a little line of glue down the side of it, and then just close that over the top of it. And then we're going to go ahead and attach our stick. And you need to put a stick that's about 2.5 inches in length, and push it down into the noodle just to get it opened up good. Then we're going to go ahead and take it back out, and we're going to glue it in. But make sure that your stick is about 2.5 inches and you're pushing it in a full inch down in there. Then we're going to go ahead and glue it around, because my stick came up short, and I had to pull the arm back out and redo it. So go ahead and start with a 2.5 inch stick. Then we're going to go ahead and take our body, and we're going to be pushing a hole right through the side on both sides, and it's going to be kind of lined up center with his nose. So go ahead and cut that open into the noodle and do the same thing for both sides. Just get it cut open so that we can stick those sticks down in there, and just make sure that they're both the same height and kind of right in the center of where his nose is. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach the arm. Just put glue down in the center and then glue around the stick. You just want to make sure that you do have the right hand on the right side and the left hand on the left side. You don't want to make sure your thumbs are facing forward. Okay, and hold it till it dries, and we're going to go ahead and build the other arm exactly like we did the other one. Okay, just make sure that you're facing your palms up in there. Glue it in. Go ahead and trim it up a little bit, and then at an angle, and get all that glued in, just making sure it's flush. And then be sure and add your bead of glue down the center just to seal it all up. Add your stick, and we're just going to attach it to the body just like we did the other one. Make sure that that sticks in there a full inch though. Open it up, and then just glue that arm in. I'm having a tough time with that tip today. Okay, then we're just going to put that in there and let it dry, and we're going to start moving on to his ears. And I'm using a Sculpey III Clay. I took a 3/4 inch ball. I'm rolling it up into like a little noodle, and then I'm going to just start shaping it. That side is towards his head, and then I'm going to do a point on the opposite side. And then I'm going to stick a stick into it and pull it out before I bake it so that I can glue it in afterwards, and it can attach to his ears. Okay, then just make a little shape inside there. Just push it in, and then we're going to just take our little stylus and do some shaping. Just push that in there so that you have a place to glue it back in later after it cooks, and just shape it up like that. Just make some shapes on it. And then do the same thing for the other ear, except for before you do the shaping on it, flip it over so that you have opposites. We're going to cook it at 250 degrees for about 15 minutes. And that's going to be his ears. Okay, and then for his fangs, we're going to do something similar. We're just going to take a little paper clip. We're going to cut it in half. We're going to get a little ball, probably about 1/4 inch, or however big you want his fang to be. Just roll it out, and then just keep rolling the tip of it to make a point. Add your sticks back in there, and we're going to cook those for about 12 minutes at 250 degrees. And then that paper clip is what's going to attach it to the cork that is in his nose. So go ahead and bake those, and then we're going to go ahead and attach his ears. We're going to cut a hole into the side of his noodle. I probably went about an inch down. You can go about wherever you want to. Just hold your ear up there until you see exactly where you want it to go. And then we're just going to stick it in there. Make sure that they're both even on both sides. And then we're going to glue them in. Just poke a hole in there and stick that ear in there. And you can make his ears whatever size you want, but that's the size I made mine. Just make sure that they're even. And then we're going to pull them out. We're going to glue them in. Just make sure that you know exactly where that hole is, because I had to play with it for a little bit and find it again. Put a little glue on the tip of the ear too, and then just go ahead and stick it in and glue them in. And then do the same thing for the opposite side. But be sure and put a little glue on the ear itself. All right, while those dry, we're going to go ahead and put his fangs in there. Just cut those tips off a little bit. And these will push right up into that cork. All you got to do is just kind of twist it back and forth for a little bit. And you may have to put a little glue back onto that paper clip if they come off those fangs. But get the fangs in there, and then you can just glue the fangs right to the nose itself. Just put a little bit of glue behind each one of them. And then we're going to move on to the legs. Now, I am putting my legs towards the back because I had a little bit of a weight issue. But once you get the tail on there, it acts as a kickstand, so don't worry about it too much. But I'm just going to put it into the bottom, and I'll show you here in a second when I pull those back out. Just kind of make sure that he does stand up good before you glue his legs in. And we're just going to glue his legs towards the bottom, the back. You see how I have the holes towards the back, not the center of the noodle. Just make sure that they're glued in there good and that they are straight. And then we're going to come back afterwards after we get those glued in good. And I took a little bit of duct tape, and I'm going to glue those in better, or tape those in better. Just make sure that those legs are straight. And then we're going to take some duct tape, cut it into strips. We're going to attach both legs together down the center. And you're not going to see any of this when you get done because his pants are going to cover all this up. But I just thought I'd add a little bit more security to it than just gluing it to the noodle. And you can add however much tape that you want to, but just get it good and taped in there good so that it does stay secure. Okay, and if you watched my last video, I used the pine wood derby weights to weight out my pilgrim. And we're going to use the same weights for this little guy, and we're just going to cut them into little squares, and we're going to stick them down into his feet. But you do need to add some weight to his feet, and I don't think that weighted beads are going to be heavy enough, so you need to use something that's pretty heavy. And these little pine wood derby weights, you just cut them with your scissors, and they go right into the foot. You just have to push them in there a little bit with your pliers, and then get them put in there real well. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and put his pants on. And then we're going to set him aside, and we're going to go ahead and build his tail. Now you're going to use a dowel rod, probably about 2 inches. 1 inch is going to go into the tail, and the other inch is going to go into the noodle. So we're going to take 2 pipe cleaners, fold them in half because we want to have some bendability in his tail. And then we're going to glue his stick in there as well. And that's what it's going to attach it to the noodle. And then just roll that up and glue it together. I didn't make it too big. I just wanted the 2 sides of the fur to meet. And then we're going to glue down the center to glue the fur together. Just get it wrapped around there real good. And then we're going to add a bead down the center, just like we did his arms. And that's what's going to glue it together. Open it up and then just glue it together. All right, now we're going to go ahead and tie a piece of jute around his waist. And you can glue his pants in too. I didn't at the top, but I tied my jute pretty tight. And then that tail is pretty much going to keep those pants up as well. Just cut that off. And then we're going to cut a hole in the back of his pants to put his tail in. And don't do it right on the seam. Just do it to the side of the seam because you don't want that seam coming open. I just went to the side of it just a little bit. And you can put your tail wherever you want to. I just went to the side a little bit, down below his waist. And then I'm going to glue that tail in. And that tail is going to add weight to the back. It's going to actually act as a kickstand. So when you bend it, he'll actually stand up really well. All right, then we're going to go ahead and attach our feet back on there. Pull his pants legs up. And then when you get done putting those feet on, just make sure that they go all the way on. Push them all the way on. And then we're going to attach his fur around his pants. And make sure your right's on your right and your left's on your left. Make sure he stands up and balances real good. And then we're going to attach the fur around his leg. Just go to the top part of his foot and just glue that all the way around. And you can make his pants a little bit shorter if you want to, but if you do, you're going to need to make his fur a little bit longer. And just make sure that that's glued on there real well. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for the other leg as well. And then we're going to pull his pants leg back down. And then I'm going to show you how I thinned out his hair on his arms. I bought some shears at Amazon. Lightly trim them out a little bit. Just comb them out a little bit and take your shears and just start trimming it up. And you can trim up however much hair you want to off of him. I trimmed up quite a bit because there was a little bit too much hair. Okay, there you have it. A cute little werewolf. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see future videos, hit subscribe. If you want to be notified when I have another video, hit the bell. Thanks for watching.